All right, just some tips I have for anyone redoing one of these hydro gear transaxles. Make sure when you take it apart, you take the seals out first that connect the charge pump to the center section. This center section will not come out. So I take a bolt and I put it in there on some vice grips, kind of yank those seals out. But those seals have to come out first before this will come out. That'll cause you a lot of problems if you don't do that. The rest of it is pretty easy to disassemble. These are the only 3 bolts that you have to take out. When you put it back together, you got to make sure this bearing down in here under this pump here is lined up and seated correctly. And then you'll want to make sure this guy on the other side, there's an end shaft that goes into a bushing. You'll want to make sure that's seated correctly. You want to use Loctite on these 3 bolts. There's a parking brake pawl on this guy. And you'll want to make sure that that is oriented the right way, depending on what your serial number is. So you'll want to pay close attention to that. You want to make sure this charge pump is oriented the right way, because if it's not, it won't work. So again, I can put a link to the manual for that. But you'll want to set those orientations right. And then there's a spacer behind and on top of this gear. There's a spacer under these, and there's another spacer that goes on top here. There's a spacer on this, and there's another spacer that goes over top here, but no spacer that goes over here before you put that cover on. Another thing to pay attention to is this this here. I actually broke mine. I broke it because I was trying to pry off the hub, and it was like basically welded on there. If I could go back in time, I would have just cut the thing and bought a new input shaft. But you'll want to be kind of careful. You can't pry here a lot. You will just bust that snap ring and bust the aluminum right off, like mine. So I'm going to have to try to use it all busted like that. So be very careful when you're prying that hub off. If you're putting too much force there, you may want to just, I don't know, cut it or something, because that caused me some issues. And then, yeah, keep the parts clean, check your wear surfaces. That's mostly why people take these apart, is to resurface those wear surfaces and take out any leak from the pumps and the motors. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You RTV it, put it all back together, tighten everything to spec, and you're good to go. And then one more thing. So under this shaft here, under this shaft, there is a bypass key that goes down in here, actually goes in the center section. So if you feel down there, there's a little hole right there. And then there's a bypass shaft that comes in from here, and it lines up with that key. And it's basically used to just kind of lift the pump off temporarily to put it in bypass. But you don't want to forget that. So you take a little grease and you take the key and plop it in there. Don't lose it. And then this shaft will go in here, and it'll hold that key in. And then you'll have to make sure that bypass shaft that goes in the other side is lined up with respect to the key in order to get it to seat to put your snap ring in. And then if all that's correct, you can even kind of turn this a little bit to make sure that pump is working okay. It's pretty hard to turn, but yeah.